We are on episode 7 now, and this time with better lighting. Today we're going to be doing hi-hats, and I don't really know if I have much to say about hi-hats as far as the sound design goes, because they can actually be pretty straightforward. We talked in the last video about how complex cymbals can be, but the thing about hi-hats specifically is because they're so short and because we're so used to the kind of abstract synthesized hi-hats that come out of drum machines, we don't have to do all the complex physical modeling that we might want to do with something like a ride or a crash. There's nothing stopping you necessarily, but at least for my purposes, they tend to be pretty straightforward. There is one thing I want to say, though, about how hi-hats are used compositionally. This is slightly off subject, but I guess I want to remind people who are more used to working in a DAW than they are on an actual drum kit that a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat are actually the same hi-hat. It's one instrument. A hi-hat is two cymbals that are kind of sandwiched together, and when the pedal of the left foot is suppressing the pedal, the hi-hat is closed, and that's when we get that short kind of hi-hat. But when we lift the left foot, we get the open hat sound, which is like a tss. A lot of people, when they're first working with drum samples in a DAW, don't realize that a closed hat and an open hat can't actually happen at the same time. I guess there's kind of an asterisk there because you could have two separate hi-hats on your kit and hit both of them at the same time, but that's very unusual. And there's also a missed opportunity because I hear in so many electronic music compositions, I only hear the closed hat. And playing with the interplay between the closed hat and the open hat is a great way to express yourself rhythmically. So this doesn't have to do with sound design necessarily, but I would encourage people to think more about how a hi-hat actually functions in the real world. And it's also worth mentioning that those aren't the only two sounds you can get out of a hi-hat. Some drummers like to have their open hats be kind of close together so you can actually hear the rim of one hi-hat kind of rattle against the other. And then some like to have a very open hi-hat, which sounds almost like a cymbal, or just like two cymbals ringing out at the same time. And then there's hi-hat barks, which are super fun. You can also strike a closed hat and then very quickly lift your foot and then kind of fade into that open hat sound, which has its own unique character to it. Hi-hats are very dynamic instruments. So when I make my hi-hat samples, I actually make two sounds. I make a closed hat and an open hat. Maybe as my sound design skills develop, I'll make like hi-hat barks and swells and stuff like that. But for now, it's just those two sounds. So we're going to be making two sets of two hi-hats, two closed, two open. And the closed hat and the open hat are going to be part of a set so that they sound related. They don't sound like two completely different instruments. They just sound like the same instrument doing two different things. I guess I had more to say about hi-hats than I thought I did. Let's start making them. Okay, let's see what we can do. I think I want to start with some audio at first. Go into my Foley collection. Okay, this sound is a really interesting one. This was the music stand in my living room that I used to like read sheet music off of, being played with a violin bow. So the music stand is a big sheet of metal, and I just dragged a violin bow across it, and it made this awesome screechy groan thing. So I think this is going to be our starting point for our hi-hat. Gonna open it up in a sampler, and I'm gonna start with something kind of short. Find a nice section here. Okay, that could be something. High pass it. So we go for something short. Already it's got some nice texture to it. You know, it's funny. I often think about the distinction between a closed hat and an open hat being its length. But here I'm just playing with the slope of the decay, and I'm already getting that kind of closed open interplay. So I think I may actually make that the primary way that we distinguish between these two different hats. I guess I want it 100 to 0. Okay, I'll make a little MIDI clip and I'll automate this between the two MIDI notes like that. The second one is definitely a lot louder, which is a bit of a problem. So I think I'm going to map the volume here to macro 2, and I'm just going to make it go, give it like a 3 dB difference, so barely even perceptible. And then I guess I'll give it like a gain knob afterwards, just to push everything up. Yeah, so the closed hat we want to be a little bit louder than the open hat. I think I do want the open hat to be a bit longer as well. So the closed hat will be like 500 milliseconds long, and then the open hat will be like 800 milliseconds long. I want that open hat to be just a little bit louder. So maybe like 2 decibels louder. Nice. What can we do with the attack? I think for this one, I think I want kind of a softer attack because the, short clicky hi-hat is such a ever-present style of hi-hat. I kind of want to go a little bit against the grain this time. So maybe I'll give it like 6 milliseconds of attack. Yeah, it's almost sounding like a shaker. Cool. I think I'm going to try a little bit of, my makeshift disperser here. Sure, why not? I think it sounds nice. I want to give it some stereo action, but my typical way of creating stereo interest is either using an auto pan or doing like a ping pong delay thing. I think I want to try something a bit more involved this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a corpus. I'm going to group the corpus and duplicate it. So we have 2 instances of corpus. So I think I do actually have to pan it here in the instrument rack. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, that's very wide sounding. I'm gonna make sure they're both high too, because they're hi-hats. Okay, I think maybe I won't hard pan them. Maybe I'll do like 35 in each direction. Maybe even less, maybe like 30. I'm wondering about the disperser after the corpuses, because the sound definitely needs some softening. I'm trying to resist the urge to use a reverb, but what else can I do to soften this? Maybe like a chorus. Maybe on this like ensemble setting. That's definitely helping. I'll try a bit of erosion just to add a little bit more noise into the signal. Yeah, adding some noise into those like super high frequencies, like above 10K is giving it some air, I think. What about that before the chorus? Yeah, I think I want to be kind of delicate here. It does need some space, I think. I think my initial instinct was right. I'm going to give it just a little bit of reverb. Not enough that it actually sounds like a reverb, but just to give it a little bit of context. Okay. A-Bing it with the erosion. It doesn't need the erosion. And I think all that's really left to do here is to high pass it. Maybe even boost some of those super high frequencies. What I'm actually tempted to do, hang on, I have to remind myself sometimes. Boosting is fine. Taking your EQ and just boosting a frequency is a perfectly valid thing to do. But sometimes it can be nice to think about, like, what can I layer with this sound that'll add those frequencies? So I'm actually going to do another corpus, this time just applying it to the whole signal with a high, dry, wet, pitched up really high. And I want to get some of those, yeah, maybe something like that. Ooh, there we go. The brightness up. There we go. So now when I layer it back in, And I'm going to give that just a little bit of gain. But I got to watch my gain staging a little bit. Maybe I'll turn these down instead of turning that up. And I want to make sure the decay isn't too long. Okay, and I think I will boost those high frequencies anyway. I'll use drum bus to shape the transients a bit. It's adding a really unpleasant kind of high frequency artifacting. I don't want that. That's much better. Maybe I'll just go for a run-of-the-mill compressor. Well, if I'm going to do that, then I might as well use my clip to zero rack. Get some limiting in there. Let's see how it responds to our clippers. Not well. Okay, I won't do any clipping there. I'll just limit it. It's kind of sounding like a tambourine a little bit. You know what might help a little bit with that is shifter on the frequency setting, and I just want to bring it up just a little bit. What does that look like before the EQ? I don't want to get too bogged down, so I'm going to bounce that in place. But I'm also going to add some fades to the sound because this closed hat is ringing out just a bit more than I want it to. There we go. Maybe I'll do the same with the open hat. Okay, consolidate that. And those are our hi-hats. Got lots of character to them and didn't take us that long at all. I lied. I want to high pass them just a little bit more. Okay, now I bounce them and normalize them. That's our final sound. Okay, hi-hat 2. This time, I used a sample before, so maybe this time I'll work with synthesis. Maybe, let's see what I can do with wavetable. There's definitely some interesting like metallic sounds in here. Maybe with the sitar wavetable we can do something. Okay, I might be going mad scientist mode a little bit. So I want the envelope to be kind of the primary driver here. So I'm going to map the decay slope and the decay time to the first two macros. Make sure the sustain is at 0. The range of the decay slope should be 100 to 0, is that right? Yeah, and then the decay time should be, let's make it a little shorter this time. Let's do like 400, and then maybe we'll make the open hat even longer, so we'll do like 900 milliseconds. So let's get a couple MIDI notes, automate those macros. Since I made the attack of the other one kind of softer, this one I want to be particularly clicky. Now, here comes the mad scientist part. I want to map this fold to the amp envelope. And I think I'll do the same with some other parameters, like the wavetable position. And I'll get a second oscillator involved. Maybe one of these complex wavetables. Or there's one that's like distortion, right? Yeah, distortion. Yeah, I want something kind of like just messed up. What if I did like... This is sounding nothing like a hi-hat so far, but I have a plan. Kind of. Detune them both very dramatically. Oh, and like before, I want to make sure that I have some sort of gain control to make sure that the closed hi-hat is on par with the open hi-hat as far as its perceived loudness. Sure, that's fine. So now with the LFOs, I want to take the rate way up and map the pitch of both oscillators to both of the LFOs. Like this. Ooh. Okay. Not sounding very hi-hatty, but I think we can use my noisification rack here to help us out. Okay, this definitely needs to be like pitched up. I think we can just pitch up the MIDI notes actually. Oh, definitely needs to be high passed. This rack is making it sound wet, which is not really what I'm going for. This has potential. I'll definitely play with the pitch of it a bit more. I think that's a good range. But maybe some shifter. I want to do some other weird pitch stuff to it. So go with like random, take the phase down, take the amount up, and the rate up as well. Because I think if we like just kind of mangle the pitch of everything, it'll eventually become something resembling noise. Maybe with the ring mod? No, maybe in the frequency mode. Okay, this has potential. It's still very squeaky. I think now's the time for like a reverb. Room size really low, and this reflect level up a lot for more of that metallic kind of ping. There we go. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Ooh, I think now I actually want some distortion. This is a very over-engineered hi-hat. Ah, sorry. I want kind of a more like messed up kind of sound. Maybe I'll get some wave shaping in there. Ooh, okay. Make sure the high pass is after the distortion. We're getting some weird peaks in there. Okay, I think I actually want to like super high pass it and then get another shifter and like pitch it down. Maybe even like... It's got potential. My problem with it though is that it kind of elongates the closed hat. So I think I'm gonna get like a volume envelope thing here. And I'm just gonna kind of draw in my own shape. Okay. We're getting there. I'm gonna make sure again that closed hi-hat is getting a bit louder. Even more, like 8 dB, 10 dB, 14 dB. Okay. Do they sound related? I think maybe the closed hat needs to be a little longer. Nice. I do think it could use some transient shaping, though. Ooh. Ugh. I'm actually... there seems to be some, like, unpredictability with this, so I'm gonna, like, duplicate all of this and have, like, a few different options to pick from. Yeah, I almost feel like the open hat needs, like, a harder attack. So I think the attack of this amp envelope, I'm going to take it down to 0 for the open hat. Maybe even like automate the drum bus. Yeah, okay. I'm going to automate the transient shaping on the drum bus. Something like that. Not being super precise. Yeah, okay. These sounds are going to need some editing. So let's bounce them. Yeah, you can tell like with the unpredictability, some of them have these like dramatic clicks at the beginning, and some of them just don't. I think that's really nice. There may be like a couple things I want to do with that. Yeah, it's a bit too harsh. That's not bad. That's really not bad either. Ooh, that one's really nice. It's got a kind of softness to it. I'll put it over here for now. Yeah, and I want to shape it. Nice. So you can imagine, right? Like, I want to choose an open hat. Okay, hang on. I think I need to control Z into oblivion. I think this drum bus is causing way too many problems. But I will do just a bit of post-processing. Ooh, clipper is not kind to it. Turn that clipper off. And bounce. Wait, no, I gotta do one more thing. I see one of the problems. And it's that this dry wet is way too high. No, not that dry wet. This dry wet. There we go. Okay. That is so much better. Okay, maybe even like 80. There we go. Okay, now I'll bounce it. So both nice. This open hat I still want a sharper attack on. So I think what I'll do, I mean this first one is fine. I'm just gonna like trim the beginning of it and then shape it a lot more aggressively. Yeah, those are some unique hi-hats. Okay, this is a weird one, but I like it. Consolidate those. Normalize. And that's it. Okay, final thoughts. This was fairly straightforward, even in moments where I tried to get silly with it. Like I said, hi-hats aren't terribly complex. At least they don't have to be. I think one of the things that has opened my eyes to what a hi-hat is and what a hi-hat can be is actually sitting behind a drum kit and hammering out some beats. I am not an incredible drummer by any means, but I think I have a decent understanding of the roles of the different pieces of kit and how those roles can inform sound design choices. One thing I've been wanting to experiment with in regard to percussion and hi-hats is round robin samples. So creating like multiple versions of a single sound that get randomized when you trigger them in the drum rack. I think that'll be a nice future experiment, but I'd want to kind of develop a framework for doing that before committing to it wholeheartedly. But it's something I'm thinking about.